we want to go back in the first book of the Bible. And I know that most of you have been through this several times. A new year has started, so we're going to bring some more of this back. You know, sometimes we read the Bible and we see it as we've always heard it instead of exactly what it's saying. If we've heard it one way, that's the way we will see it, and we won't get to we won't really look at what it's saying. But we want to go back and see what the Bible said about how we got here, because knowing how we got here, folks, we can understand better where we're going. And we just want to we're going to just kind of break down. See, the people that wrote the Bible were Hebrews. They were Hebrew people. They had their own language, and they had their own way of looking at things, and it was translated into English, folks. And in any language that you translate, you're going to find some things that's going to be a little different. That we wouldn't have an exact word to mean exactly what the other language was bringing out to them. So we want to just kind of to look at this creation story and a little careful as the Hebrews, as the writer put it down. And we'll just go verse by verse for a little while. We're not going to look at everything, but we're going to just kind of come break some things down here. It starts out, it says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth." In the beginning. Now, that word beginning means it was the first of its kind. It doesn't mean that God began somewhere. God didn't. But in the beginning of this creation, God created the heaven and earth. That word God, you see there in the Hebrew, is the word Elohim, and it's plural. So the actual Hebrew writing would say, in the beginning, or at the first, the gods created the heaven and the earth. Now, we know that God is but one God. The Bible declares that. But from the very first, the word Elohim, you see the plurality of the person. And he's the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and he's always been that. We talked about Jesus being born back before Christmas and how he came to earth. But Jesus didn't have a beginning here. He was always here from eternity to eternity. Now, he began here as a man. Here. But he always was. He was with the Father when this thing began. Now, he declares over in Revelation, Jesus does, he said, and we can look over if you want to look at it, but everybody will know that it's there. Twice he said, "I am Alpha and Omega." Remember that? Yes. And Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet, and Omega is the last. In other words, he was saying, "I am the first and the last." But see, science, when they look at how the creation is going and how it works, trying to deny God, but they will say they're always searching for the first cause. They say something caused this. They won't say God caused it, but they'll say, there was a first cause that caused the plants to grow, that caused things to come to life. They're always looking for the first cause. But when you look back and you run that word alpha back, it means first cause. Jesus said, "I am the first cause." And so, they could have saved a lot of money searching for the first cause if they'd actually just believed what Jesus declared. I am the first cause. And that word Omega, it doesn't mean that he's just ending everything. It means the plan has come to conclusion. I'm the first cause for it to start, and I'm the conclusion of the plan. And it was always, folks, in Jesus. Now, it says God created the heavens and the earth. And there's a period at the end of that. You notice that? That is a complete thought. In the beginning, before there was an earth, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, created is a past tense. So it shows you that somewhere back in time, before there was, he created it. Out of nothing, he brought this thing forth. Now, it created means to form or to make. Now, the heaven and the earth, now I want you to understand the Hebrew people called everything above earth heaven. They knew there was a place where there was God at, but the place of the clouds was called the heavens. When we just say the sky, they said the heavens. So anything above the earth was the heavens. And so what he's saying here, that God created the heavens, everything there, the place where he lives, the planets, the moon, the heavens, and the earth. There was nothing that we see here that God did not create, folks. But he created it in the beginning. And it was a absolute perfect creation because God, all of God's works is perfect. Now, the picture there that you see in verse 1 declares, before there was anything, before there was a heaven and earth, God made them. They were not here until Elohim set it forth. In a place of nothing, God spoke forth something. And see, that's another one of those things. When we talk about creation and the scientific natural mind, they will bring up these things about mountains. And they'll say, well, we know it takes so many thousands and thousands of years for a mountain to get this high. Well, if your mind is the mind of evolution, that's probably right. It will take millions of years. But when you know it was created 1 second before, there was nothing. 1 second later, there was the mountain. See? But a lot of that millions of years stuff that they first came out with that before this could happen, has a lot of it's been debunked. I saw we get a little off, but I saw an article where they had these stalagmites, I think what you call them, in the caves, and they told how many hundreds and hundreds of years that it took to grow them. And I believe the cave was in Britain. I read the article, and they closed it off, and nobody had been in there for like 4 or 5 years. And they opened it back up, and when they went in there, there was stalagmites from the ceiling to the floor that wasn't there when they closed it. See, and they found this rock out in California. And some of y'all may have read that article. It hadn't been long, too many years back since it came out. They found this rock, this odd-shaped rock, and they'll tell you how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years it takes to form the rock. But they X-rayed this rock, and there was something in it. And they'd put the age of this rock like 500,000 years, and they cut it open, and there was a marine spark plug in the middle of it. So see, sometimes we don't know near as much as we think we know. But it said, we missed that age on that one. but there's been several of those, But see, when you get your mind, when you won't allow yourself to look at what God said happened and how it happened, then your mind, you have to make up stuff to explain away God, and you can't really explain away God. We're going to see some of this in this creation story. There's no way to explain away God. But man tries to do that because as long as there's God, we are not the top on the food chain, folks. As long as there's God, see, he has the right to set the rules, and man doesn't like that. And the natural man has never liked that. But like it or not, there it is. It says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, you either have to understand that God created this thing void without form, or that it became void without form. And that word was there is the Hebrew word Hayah, and it means became. And Isaiah 45:18 says that God did not create it, the world, he said that word that's translated in Isaiah 45:18, it says God did not create it vain. But the word translated vain is the same word here, without form. So Isaiah said it was not created without form. It was created to be inhabited. And see, if you believe that all of God's works is perfect, and the Bible says that, then you have to understand that there was a world before this creation, and that became void and without form. And we have to know that who God is has never changed. Eternities before the creation, God was who God is. Eternities. And so the thing, and when he gave us the commandments, folks, it was who he was. He understood what brought life, and he understood what brought death. But it says the world became without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, darkness means there was no light. It means obscurity. You can run that back. There's a bunch of meanings to this darkness. And upon the deep is a mass of water. This thing was covered with water. It was void and without form. A world without form, with no light, covered with a mass of water. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. Now, we know that God is a spirit. But that's what he is. He is a spirit, but he is a being. And that spirit of God began to move on the water. And that word move talks about that it hovered or that it shook. And it caused, the next line says, and God said, let there be light. And there was an article last year, I believe it was, where some student talked about, he was a college student, that he ran a experiment, and he said that if, he put a loud voice, complete darkness, and he would broadcast this voice over water, and he said absolutely the water would send forth light with just the voice over it, that there would be light coming out of the water from the vibration, if the voice was loud enough. But this let there be light was more than just a light like we see it, if you'll look that up. He said, let there be, in the New Testament, Jesus came along and he said, I am the light of the world. Remember that? Yeah. Then he turned around and said, you're the light. It didn't mean that we was going to walk around shining. Jesus didn't walk around shining. You see the pictures where he was shining, but Jesus didn't walk around shining. When he said, I am the light, he meant I am the revelation of who God is. When he said, you're the light, he meant for us to be the revelation to the world of who God was, of the goodness of God. And this word light is exactly that. God said, let there be a revelation of who I am, because the revelation in the world past of who God was faded. As long as the revelation of God is there, it won't become void without form. As long as there's a revelation of God, that revelation of who God is has to move back for that to happen. And we're not going to get into that tonight about what caused it, not deep, but God moved upon the waters. There was a flood and said, let there be light. And the Bible said, and there was light. Now, he declared it, he spoke it. And that word, let there be, is exactly the same word that's translated, and the earth was. Same word that was translated was is the same word used in God said, let there be light. That word was the word heya, which means became. And when you look at it here, and God said, let there become light. Let there be light. And there was light. It's the exact same Hebrew word. Let there be a revelation. Let there be the brightness. Let the creation have the revelation of who God is. And the Bible said there was light. And as soon as you get the revelation of who God is, there is God's light in you. Now, verse 4 says, and God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God perceived that it was good, viewed it to be excellent, without evil, and he separated, that word divide it means to separate it into different parts. Now, we got a natural darkness and we got a natural light, but 4 days into creation he made the sun and the moon, the natural lights, but there was light here, which is the revelation of who he was. 4 days before there was a moon and sun, there was the revelation of who God was. Now, 5 is kind of self-explanatory. It said, and God called the light, this natural light here, and he called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And that word firmament means a canopy. Now there was water on the earth and above the earth. There was a flood, folks. There was a flood that happened that changed this thing totally into chaos. Now, just as he divided the light from the darkness, he's dividing the water from the water. He's making a space here between earth and the heavens. This mass of water had engulfed all creation. Now, and God called the firmament heaven, and like I said to the Hebrews, everything above the earth is heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. Now, the dry land, I want you to notice, God made a separation of the waters off, and the dry land appeared. It didn't say damp land, muddy land. He moved back the waters, and it was dry. As he spoke those waters back, the earth was dry. Now, in the time of creation, there was one landmass. He just moved it off, and what was left was one landmass. They were not countries like we see today, where the earth's divided with oceans between everybody. There was one landmass. And the Bible tells us a little later that it was divided in the days of Peleg, one of the Hebrew descendants. But in the creation, there was just one. Now, and that explains some things too. Science will find animals that is mostly in one continent. They'll find species of them in another continent, divided by oceans. But when you understand, to start with, they were all one landmass, it's no big deal. When it split, whatever animals was on that part went with it. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and the dry land appeared, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called the seas. And God saw that it was good. Called he the seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. Now, if you look up that word in the Hebrews, brought forth, it says sprouted, to sprout. The earth sprouted, which gives the indication that God seeded this thing, the dry land. He seeded it and then said sprout. And it grew. It came up into the grass and the tree. All sorts of different species of grass and trees, and whose seed was in itself. In other words, it had the ability to make like kind from the seed that was in it. And again, say that throws those folks that believes it all was a gigantic accident. That makes the argument more ridiculous. If there was not a creator, if there was not a plan, what force was it that caused things to want to reproduce itself? What force was it that caused the grass to know it needed to produce a seed to grow more grass? It didn't have a brain. Why would it care? What would the force that caused the tree to bring fruit to reproduce itself? It doesn't have an intelligence. Why would it care? But all things reproduce itself. And there's the male and the female in all living things. But see, again, an accident would have no reason or desire because it doesn't know that it's going to die. So it would have no reason or no desire to want to leave behind it like species. But God put in everything so that he would not have to go back and redo the creation because he knew man was going to sin. There'd be no force or reasoning without God for inanimate things to have a desire to reproduce themselves. But they all do. They all reproduce themselves because God said so. Now, after their kind simply means that. You runs that back. It means reproducing the species, the like species. Now, verse 14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, and divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years." Now he's hanging the natural lights. It's a different Hebrew word here for light than it was in verse 3. This light just simply means an luminous body or a lamp, something that shines. And so now he's hanging the natural lights. Now, but look what he said about them. Let them be for signs, for seasons, for days, and years. Now, we understand that the changing of the moons, and we understand the seasons, but he said let them be for signs. The Hebrew said let them be monuments of proof. Monuments of proof. When you look up and you see the moon hanging there, and you see the stars up there, and you see the suns up hanging up there on nothing, let it be a monument of proof that there was a creator that set it in its place, and it's not moving except by the word that he put in it. You move this way, you move in your circuit, but it hangs there on nothing. Job declared that he hangeth the world on nothing, and when that was written, the people who were counted smart in those days, the scientific minds of those days, really thought the world was plodding around up there on the back of a gigantic turtle. That was some of the Greek stuff. What we call Greek fables was not fables in those days. It was they said it to be, they thought, okay, that's what it was. But in those times when they thought that, or whether some thought it was on the back of Atlas. This God just toting it around up there. But the Spirit inspired Job to say he hung it up on nothing. It's just hanging out there. It's hanging there on his word, folks. But and that word seasons is the same word that you'll find in Leviticus 23, translated feast, the feast days of the Jews. And it means appointments. Let it be for appointments and for days and years. Appointments. God said, I'm going to use the sun. I'm going to use this moon. I'm going to use them. I'm going to use the heavens as my painting board to show you what's happening. And say there's folks that we talked about the other day about the blood moons that just brush off the blood moons like just a natural thing. God said that he would use them for appointments to show us things that's happening here, folks. And it also, as much as proof, it also shows us that God has those bodies that we see, those planets, that moon, the star. God has them in his hand. He can do with them whatever he wants. If he wants them to line up at a certain day, he lines them up at a certain day. And they're called blood moons and eclipses. But to show that he is God. Now, and let there be for lights in the firmament and the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and he made stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. He set them. And we talk about, all the billions and billions of years of earth, and the sun's still there and the moon's still there, because they've been set there. You've never saw an accident that worked perfectly that long. There's something else you ain't never saw. You never saw a fire that burned without fuel. even for 6,000 years, much less all these millions. The sun's been there ever since God set it there. And they say it's it's just a world of compact, gases, and that's just tremendously hot. We don't know how to build a fire and keep it regulated without a regulator. If you don't pour fuel on it, it'll go out. If you do pour fuel on it, it'll get bigger and hotter. But there's the sun doing exactly what God set it there to do for all these years. And there's every once in a while you'll get an article where some scientist is saying, "Oh, we just got like another million years before it's going to burn out." It'll stop when the Creator says we don't need it. Oh, it's going to stop one day because we won't have any need of it when He gets here and becomes again the light of the world. But now, verse 20. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly." In other words, a lot of them. "The moving creature that has life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of the heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good." Now, the fowls, the birds, the whales, the fish, the sea turtles, all the water brought forth, the Bible says, abundantly. Now again, science looks at birds, and they'll say, "Well, they were once fish. They got scales on their legs." No, they came out of the water, but they came out of that water a bird. He's got scales on his legs because he was created that way by the same Creator that put scales on the fish that stayed in the water. And there's a lot of things in the water that don't have scales at all. But they look at the chicken's leg with scales and they say, "Well, he used to be a fish." No, he was always a chicken. The water brought him forth when God said, "Bring them forth," they came forth. But they did come out of the water. They came out of the water because God called them out. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let fowl multiply in the earth." Do you see that? The chicken is not akin to the fish in any way. And what we know now that we've got to where we can study genetics. If there is, let's just use the dog for example. They may not have been, we'll use a breed, like the blue tick. They may not have been a blue tick in a dog's generation for 4 or 5 generations. But if it's in there, one day he'll have to throw a dog that looks like a blue tick because it's in that bloodline. You ever notice that no bird has ever hatched a fish? You never went fishing and caught a chicken either. because they never was a fish, and the fish never was a bird. God called them out separate. Jim's laughing. That kind of shock if you fishing along with your top water bait and caught a chicken, wasn't it? I almost caught a duck one time, but it was a duck. I saw it was a duck. Yeah, he dove down and got it though. He was not a fish catching it. Verse 24 says this, "And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so." Now out of the ground came the animals, the insects. God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after its kind. And God saw that it was good. Everything out of the earth, which is also where he created man. The body of man came out of earth. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Now, the earth He spoke into existence out of nothing. Out of nothing. But he formed man's body out of material that was already here when he spoke the earth into it. He formed the body of man out of the earth. And let us make man. And we've got folks even today that said, oh, he was talking to the angels. No, he was talking to Jesus, who by him was all things created. Let us. And that shows, see, again, the absolute unity of the Godhead. He didn't say, let's make man that looks like me or looks like you. Let's make man that looks like the Holy Spirit. He said, let us, because they all were the same. It's three in one to make the Godhead, but Jesus was there, the Holy Spirit of God that moved upon the waters. Everything that was God was there to start with. Let us. He wasn't talking to the angels, because the angels are not made in God's image. You were. Till sin changed us, we were in God's image and after God's likeness. And gave them dominion over all the earth. That means he gave man the right to rule. In the modern way of thinking, man's become less important than, the whales and the eagles, and they'll charge you like $50,000 if you break an eagle egg, but you can kill an unborn child on a whim. See, so we've brought man down to the level of all other animals, but God didn't. God created them different and separate. And I saw that. What was it? Little panda bears or something the other day. Somebody had put a little advertisement out, and the little panda bears had a sign that says "Save the baby humans." So, but that's where we've come to. But God created man to rule in this planet that He created for man, created perfect and gave it to man. Now, created them all male and female in all the species. Now, He said, verse 28 says this, and God blessed them, or spoke favorably toward them. And God said, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living creature that moves upon the earth. Replenish the earth, fill up the earth again. Fill it up again. Now, everything was creating after its kind. God created man in His image after His likeness, and God's plan was for man to fill up the earth with the God kind. His image, His likeness. Fill up the earth with the God kind. That was the plan. And that plan has never changed, folks. Now, even when sin made man into another image, that plan that the earth would be filled with God kind hadn't changed. It's still going to work. Now, this creation also became corrupted. We understand when sin came. Now, that the Bible talks about how that the earth was, destroying itself. And what happened? A flood came. Now we got this story. God created the heavens and the earth. The Bible says all His work's perfect. He created it. Between verse 1 and verse 2, it became corrupted. There was a flood that wiped everything clean. God started a recreation. Now here we go over in chapter 6 where we read about the flood. The earth was dying again. What happened? We got another flood that destroyed everything again. But see, God's plan has always been for man to be on this planet ruling. So when the second flood came, when Noah's flood came, we had man already here. And what did he tell Noah? To bring the creation on the boat with him to save seed. The seed. Now, when the waters came again, destroyed the world again. When Noah got off that boat, there was still sin in Noah, but he got off that boat with a brand new, fresh start. Of course, with sin in him, it didn't work. But like I said, man was always in God's plan, and even though man had sinned against God, God's plan for man did not change, and it has not changed till this day. Now, we are once again destroying all of creation. If you don't believe it, look around you. But Revelations, look at the plan. Perfect world, it become corrupted. There was the flood that destroyed it all. He came back, he made a perfect creation. It was corrupted. There was a flood that destroyed it all. Because God will not allow his creation to go forever corrupted. That's not his plan. But in Revelations 11 and 18, it talks about Jesus is coming to destroy those that destroyed the earth. So you see this thing working the same way again? Revelations 21 and 5, Jesus said, "Behold, I make all things new." I'm going to come, I'm going to destroy those that destroy the earth. I'm going to make all things new. Here we go again. Here we go again into a third creation. But this creation is going to be a little different. This creation is going to be filled with the God kind. Those who have faced the trials. Those that have overcome by the blood of the Lamb. Those that's already been there and defeated him through Jesus. Defeated the devil through Jesus. He's coming this time. The world this time, this next creation will be filled with the God kind, which was always his plan. Always his plan. It will not be after this creation. It will never be destroyed again, because the revelation of who God is, because Jesus will rule here, and the revelation of who God is will be forever in this new creation. It's planned from the beginning. You see, it's planned from the beginning all the way through. Now, the writer of Ecclesiastes got it right when he said, "There's nothing new under the sun." Nothing new. And see, as you look back and you realize, if you realize that there was a creation before Adam, then it'll put a lot of pieces together for you that you might have asked, that you might have had questions about. Now, see, a lot of people will try to fit what science says into the Bible narrative, try to make both right. Well, you can't make both right. Because a lot of the things that science says is theories, things that they've come up with, trying to push God aside and come up with an answer. Now, there's scripture in Job that talks about a creature called Leviathan, and we don't know what that is. And some believes that was a dinosaur, but I can't see dinosaur anywhere in here. Can you? Look like he would have mentioned if there was these big folks, these big dinosaurs trying to eat man. We've got dinosaur bones. But when you realize there was a creation before Adam, now we got something else. We see these, they come out with bones out of these caves, and these men that look like they were more apes than they were men. And folks, no ape has ever turned into a man. No. And we find, scribblings on cave walls, and we talk about millions of years. That wasn't after Adam. That wasn't after Adam, because after Adam, you see where these people were building cities. Adam standing beside Einstein would make Einstein look like an idiot. He would. He had the knowledge of God. And when sin came, it didn't just immediately obliterate what Adam knew. Adam didn't live in a cave. Adam was brilliant. But when you understand there was another creation, when there was a punk angel here that caused everything into chaos, and some of these things will, you can see in your mind what happened. What happened? When Adam came along, he was a man like you and me. He was what God had always wanted. Children. And he sent Christ so that we could have, where we could be brought back into life, where he could have children. And he is making a new creation this last time, where he will rule with his family for eternity. That's the promise. That's the promise to the church. That we will rule and reign with him forever. God kind, ruling in his own planet. That was God's plan. And it's going to happen, and it's going to work. We see the world becoming void and without form again. But this time, this next creation will be the last time that it ever happens again. You know, last time it ever happens. The Great Tribulation will absolutely devastate what's left of the world. But like I said, Jesus said, behold, I'll make all things new. Amen. A new heaven and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. Was the plan in Genesis. Hadn't changed one iota. And aren't you glad? I am. I'm glad to be a part of this one. All right. We hope you've got something out of this. Every once in a while, I'll just have to go back and look at Genesis again, because there's so many, and not just where we stop tonight, folks. There's so much in Genesis that when you see, you know, it'll give you a whole new idea on why things are the way they are. And I know a lot of religion won't teach it, but if it's there, this is the truth. It's not what I believe, it's what this book says. And again, the prophets all knew that there was another world before them. Jesus knew that there was. All of them knew. And we came along and lost it. But it's still in there, folks. It's still in there, and God's an amazing God.